Tonight, defiance. Iran's opposition leader emerges as hundreds of thousands take to the streets to demand a fair counting of the votes, and the protesting turns deadly. I'm Jeff Glor. Also tonight, Israel's prime minister on Iran, the settlement, and the possibility of a Palestinian state.
I've opened the door for peace, and I hope that the Palestinians and the Arab world responds to it.
As the president begins his fight for health care reform, we'll take you to a town that outspends the nation, but may not be getting better care in return. And how to turn throwaways into fashion gold, a true recession bright spot.
This is the CBS Evening News with Katie Couric.
Good evening, Katie's off. We begin tonight with stunning images from Iran, which has seen its largest demonstration since the 1979 revolution. Hundreds of thousands jammed the capital, as you can see, claiming Friday's election for president was a sham and demanding the opposition reform candidate be declared the winner. Late today, the protesting turned deadly. Tonight, despite continued crackdowns on the media, we are joined on the phone by Elizabeth Palmer. Elizabeth.
Good evening, Jeff. Well, ever since that election last Friday, extraordinary events every single day have made the outcome of this epic political power struggle impossible to predict. And there were fresh twists and turns today.
Opposition supporters are once again skirmishing with police in the streets of the capital tonight. Earlier today, at the close of an otherwise peaceful rally, at least one man was shot dead, and many more were wounded in circumstances that remain unclear. But it had all started so well. A relaxed and eager crowd stretched for 4 miles through central Tehran this afternoon, everyone heading in the same direction.
This rally was officially canceled when the Interior Ministry said it was illegal. But somehow, thousands of young people have heard that there's a gathering, and they're streaming into the center of the city.
They came to see this man, Mir Hossein Mousavi, the opposition candidate who hadn't been seen in public since he lost the election. As his four-wheel drive inched through the mob, he tried to address them on a loudspeaker. Our people are after respect and their votes, he told those few close enough to hear him, but it didn't matter. The crowd picked up the chant, "We march again tomorrow at 5. Riot police watched, but seemed to have instructions not to interfere. That's a dramatic turnaround from the past 2 days when they attacked and beat any opposition demonstrators brave enough to take to the streets. They also targeted journalists. Our cameraman had to stay hidden behind a storefront grill to avoid arrest. In addition, text messaging has been switched off for days, cell phone service is intermittent, and internet sites and satellite channels from abroad have been blocked. What we were allowed to shoot on Sunday was President Ahmadinejad's jubilant victory rally, with thousands of his adoring supporters sure that he had won a legitimate landslide. But the opposition has called it fraud. Gary Six says the election results showed total contempt for the voters.
They announced the election far earlier than they could possibly have known what the outcome really was. The numbers don't add up.
Iran's supreme leader originally called the election results a divine assessment. But in what might be a sign that the regime is off balance, he's now told Mousavi to file a formal challenge in court. Iran's highest religious council has also acknowledged the complaint of fraud and says it will have something to say in 10 days.
Over the past couple of days, the opposition protesters have begun shouting, "God is great," which was the emotional rallying cry of the students and activists in the Iranian Revolution of 1979. Jeff?
All right, Elizabeth Palmer live tonight in Iran. Elizabeth, stay safe. The news from Iran today shared headlines with Israel with another major development. Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu's endorsement Sunday of a Palestinian state. And small wonder, for the Israelis, the prospect of a nuclear-armed Iran is chilling. Here's Richard Roth.
For Israel's prime minister, who's argued the world's big worry should be Iran, not the unresolved conflict here, Ahmadinejad's re-election made the point. The Iranian threat looms large, Netanyahu said last night. And a poll here showed 59% of his people would back an Israeli military strike on Iran if it builds a nuclear bomb. Netanyahu was also moving with the public mood when he finally conceded there could be a Palestinian state, with a flag and a national anthem, as he put it, though certainly not with an army.
He gave many reservations, but he said, under these conditions, we are willing to accept a Palestinian state.
And that's a big deal.
That's a big deal, and that's a big step for him.
He's clearly felt the pressure from President Obama, who wanted him to go further and freeze construction in West Bank settlements, and from Israeli settlers who feared he might actually do that. When it comes to feeling squeezed, though, Palestinians say their experience can't be matched, confined to living on a landscape that's just littered with rocks and hard places. And inside the barricade today that Israel calls a security fence and Palestinians call a prison wall, Netanyahu's big step was just another big disappointment.
The only word he mentioned that some people consider positive, the issue of the state. But he didn't mean a state. All the conditions he put made it not a state, but a ghetto.
If there's a new breeze blowing in the Middle East, Palestinians say it's not brought any change. Richard Roth, CBS News, Ramallah.
Benjamin Netanyahu is the Prime Minister of Israel. Mr. Prime Minister, thanks for joining us. I want to start by talking about this extraordinary speech you made yesterday. Are you surprised so far at the negative reaction it's received from Palestinians and other Arab leaders?
Well, I'm disappointed because I took a step, not an easy step, and I said, here's what we are prepared to do for peace. We're prepared to have a Palestinian state next to a Jewish state. And there are 2 points here. One, that the Palestinian state recognize the Jewish state just as we're asked to recognize the Palestinians. And second, that the Palestinian state would be demilitarized so that we don't experience once again the hurling of thousands of rockets on our cities. So yes, I suppose I'd like a better response, and maybe it'll sink in over time. But I think I've opened the door for peace, and I hope that the Palestinians and the Arab world responds to it.
Don't you think an established and regulated military in Palestine, if there was one, would be different than terrorists lobbing rockets and random opportunities from Gaza?
There are 2 questions about this. One is, what is the military force that we face? And obviously we don't want to see an army with rockets, tanks, mortars, artillery, because the Palestinians don't really need that to govern themselves. To govern themselves, or even to deal with terrorists internally, you don't really need anything beyond small arms and relatively simple security measures. But we have to make sure that those weapons are not used against us. That's happened before. And we also want to ensure in demilitarization that the Palestinian areas do not become infiltrated with rockets.
I wonder if we can talk for a moment now about the issue of settlements. Is this no new settlements, no expansion on existing settlements? Can you clear that up for us?
Yes. In fact, I said yesterday that we would not build new settlements, that we won't expropriate additional land for the existing settlements, and I hope that we in the United States, my government and the Obama administration, can find a common position on this, because we'd like to move the peace process forward.
Would you be willing to freeze settlements?
I think the question of not expanding the territory is different from freezing life. You know, you have children there. You have babies that are born. What do you do with them? You have to give them kindergartens. You have to give them schools. What we talked about is just continuing normal life without prejudging the territorial outcome, without grabbing new land. I don't want to grab new land. I don't want to prejudge the final outcome, which will be determined in negotiations, which will determine the future of the territories, the future of these communities. But we really want to have people live normal lives until that final peace agreement is reached. Then we'll decide on the rest.
Turning to Iran, Mahmoud Ahmadinejad has been reelected by a wide majority. It has resulted in a great deal of unrest, as you know, and as we discussed in this broadcast. What do you make of that unrest?
I think it unmasks the fundamental nature of the Iranian regime. It's not a democracy. In democracies, you don't have violence in the wake of elections. You have a resolution. Governments are either re-elected or changed.
Was the election a fraud?
You know, was the election a true election in Iran? How can you say it's a totalitarian state that perhaps has elections on occasion, but we know the true nature of the Iranian regime. I think now the whole world knows that too.
Mr. Prime Minister, thank you so much for your time.
Thank you.
And to see our complete interview with Benjamin Netanyahu, go to cbsnews.com and click on Evening News. Now the debate over health care in the U.S. In a speech today, President Obama called America's health care system, quote, a ticking time bomb, one that threatens to blow up the federal budget. As Chief White House correspondent Chip Reid reports, the president made his case for change in front of a tough audience.
I need your help, doctors.
15 years ago, the nation's doctors helped kill health care reform after being kept on the sidelines of the debate. President Obama says it's a mistake he won't make.
That's why I will listen to you and work with you to pursue reform that works for you.
So far this time, the American Medical Association seems to be on board.
The American Medical Association will figure out the way that we can best help the president reach the goals that we share.
But that commitment will be tested in the coming weeks and months over a series of contentious issues. First, the president's plan for a government health insurance option to compete with private plans. Today, the president found himself on the defensive.
When you hear the naysayers claim that I'm trying to bring about government-run health care, know this: they're not telling the truth.
The AMA says it's open to the possibility of compromise, but Republicans in Congress plan to oppose any public option, which they say would be a step towards socialized medicine.
When the government is in charge, health care is denied, delayed, and rationed.
Another major barrier for the plan the president laid out today: cost, which he estimates at about $1 trillion over 10 years. Critics say that's about half the real cost.
What they're talking about here is essentially magic healthcare reform. They say the magic words and costs go away.
And where will the money come from? The president says he's already identified about $950 billion in savings, about 2/3 in budget cuts and 1/3 in tax increases. But critics say much of that is wishful thinking. Cuts of $200 billion in payments to hospitals, for example, are fiercely opposed by many in Congress.
The president got a standing ovation when he said he might be open to some kind of relief for doctors from malpractice lawsuits. But he then got a smattering of boos when he said he still opposes caps on jury awards. Jeff?
All right, Chip Reid at the White House tonight. Chip, thank you. When the president began organizing his White House staff for health care reform, he passed around an article from the New Yorker magazine, which profiled the town of McAllen, Texas, population 126,000, where Medicare costs are twice the national average. But is the population any healthier? Here's Don Teague.
For the South Texas border town of McAllen, it's unwanted criticism. First, from an article in the New Yorker that highlighted the area's sky-high medical costs. And now from President Obama, who today suggested McAllen's doctors are part of a national problem. Physicians ordering unnecessary treatments.
Treatments that, in some cases, they don't really need. Treatments that, in some cases, can actually do people harm by raising the risk of infection or medical error.
Doctors here say the criticism is grossly unfair.
I don't think anybody wakes up in the morning saying they're going to go defraud the Medicare system or Medicaid system.
And have written an open letter to the president asking him to meet McAllen's doctors face to face.
Come to McAllen, Texas, and come visit us. I would love to show him this facility. I would love to show him the people of the Rio Grande Valley.
But doctors here say McAllen faces unique health care challenges, sitting in the poorest metro area in the nation with the lowest number of doctors per capita. It also has one of the unhealthiest populations, with high rates of obesity, diabetes, and heart disease. Still, researchers say other cities face similar challenges, and their doctors manage to keep costs down while still providing quality care.
We need to think about reform of the payment system that will start to reward providers for providing better value. Not just for doing more services.
Back in McAllen, Ruben Ramirez, who sees 4 different doctors per month, says he should have all the care he needs for his bad back, diabetes, and erratic blood pressure.
You want more care, not less. Yes, exactly, correct. That's what I would like.
Where to draw the line between enough health care and too much, with a Texas border town at the forefront of the debate. Don Teague, CBS News, McAllen, Texas.
Next up on the CBS Evening News, taking aim at the most dangerous problem facing travelers. Pilots too tired to fly. Major changes may be coming soon for regional airlines. The FAA said today it wants them to have better access to pilot training records and new regulations to fight pilot fatigue, the first in more than half a century. All of this was prompted by that deadly crash of a regional airliner near Buffalo in February. More now from Nancy Cordes.
Long before this Colgan Air crash outside Buffalo in February, the NTSB was warning airlines about the dangers of fatigue, especially at regional airlines where lower paid, often less experienced pilots fly heavier schedules.
Without a doubt, the single largest thing that makes it difficult to get enough rest is that they fly us very hard.
Captain David Rater has flown for a regional airline for 10 years.
What I felt in terms of fatigue is coming in on the last flight of my sequence and feeling slow, feeling not very sharp, and landed and known that I'm glad that's the last flight for me because that's the end of my rope. I can't go any further than this.
The NTSB found fatigue played a role in at least 250 airline accident deaths over the last 15 years, including this crash of an American Connection Jetstream in 2004. The pilots were at the end of a 15-hour workday. The pilot in this Delta Connection crash was suffering from insomnia, while the flight crew in this Northwest Airlink crash was on its 6th leg of the day. In the case of Colgan Air, the pilot had slept in the crew room the night before the flight.
We weren't fatigued. We were able to react very quickly.
Jeff Skiles was co-pilot of U.S. Airways Flight 1549, the so-called Miracle on the Hudson. His union is pushing Congress to reduce the number of consecutive duty hours that airlines can schedule pilots from 16 down to 12.
But you really want to be flying with a pilot who's on that 15th or 16th hour of duty, shooting an approach at night in bad weather, when clearly he's going to be tired.
We will have a new rule.
The FAA's new administrator pledged today to change pilot rest regulations.
We're going to have a tough decision to make, and I don't mind making it.
But he has his work cut out for him, due in part to pressure from airlines. The rules have gone unaltered since the 1940s. Nancy Cordes, CBS News, Washington.
The First Lady called it America's greatest artistic gift to the world. She's talking about jazz, and today Michelle Obama invited a few of the country's top performers, including Wynton and Branford Marsalis, plus dozens of jazz students, to the White House. The first event in a series.
I brought my own family with me today because I want to keep them alive and aware of all kinds of music other than hip-hop.
The highlight came when the young ones got to jam with the greats. Finally tonight, high style at low prices. Sounds like a nice combination, especially in this economy. As Kelly Cobiella reports now, one place for smart shoppers might be their neighbor's house. It is tonight's Bright Spots.
If I didn't swap it tonight, I was cutting it into a tunic.
It's Thursday evening, and this posh Miami Beach home has been turned into a bargain basement. Here, swapping is the new shopping.
This is so cute. That one's great. Oh, Trudy, this is gorgeous.
15 shopaholics clean out their closets and trade their gently worn Gucci for someone else's Chanel.
Yeah, not taking out your wallet is fun, and getting something new is fun.
I think the idea of the barter has been something that's been going on for a long time. I think it's just trying to catch fire now.
Because
of the recession.
These days, it's hip to pay less for more. A lot more. Michelle Lanise bought a whole new wardrobe at Goodwill.
There must be 25, 30 pieces for $48.
In the first 4 months of this year, Goodwill sales were up $71 million, a 10% increase over last year.
You are just as likely to see
a woman come in a brand new Mercedes in a Goodwill as you are on a bike.
Lynn Tella found brand name jeans for her daughter for only $2.
For me, it's a game, it's a hunt, it's entertainment, but it just makes economic sense. This is cute.
Which is also why consignment stores like C. Madeline's in Miami are seeing a bump in business. This store is on track to beat last year's sales by $150,000.
The jacket is fabulous.
Owner Madeline Kirsch sets the price for the clothes, and when they sell, the former owner gets half.
Knowing that I can bring it here and make money off of that is totally a relief.
I'm going to use this, and I was never using that.
It's all about recycling. You don't need designer labels to sell or swap. Just friends who share the same size and taste.
You know that you're at least going to get some new stuff.
But let the swapper beware. No returns allowed.
I asked my swapping partner if she would trade back, and it was an emphatic no.
Kelly Kobiea, CBS News, Miami Beach.
That is the CBS Evening News tonight. For Katie Couric, I'm Jeff Glor. Thanks for watching. Good night.